Here we are at exercise 18 of Learn Python 3 the Hard Way. And in this one, we're going to learn the first steps to making Python much more useful. So you've been doing what's called straight line scripts. So a straight line script is like exercise 13 here, where you start at the very top and you do one line at a time, all the way down until you're done. That's it. What we really want to be able to do is something called branching. So think of a tree. A tree grows and has branches going out. Now what we've got is a pole. So this Python script here is a pole. It's just straight, goes straight from the top to the bottom. That's it. We want a branch. So if we look at this, just look at this visually. It's kind of like a tree. If this is the main trunk and then it branches in, see? And it branches in. Think of these as little branches where it diverges. It splits. It's like forks in the road. You can make a choice. You can go here or you can go there. Now, the thing about this script is that it's actually very similar, or the concept is similar to what we did in exercise 13, where we have argv. So one way to look at this as we go through it is it's a way for you to pass inputs, arguments, the same way you got inputs from the user. It's a way for Python to pass inputs to parts of itself. And we're going to call those parts functions, just like that. Okay, so in the definition, or in the book, you get a decent definition of functions. It's sort of like the basic definition I can start you off with, and then it's basically up to you to go from there as we get further and further down. So make sure you read this, okay? And then I'm going to add a little bit more explanation here. All right, interactively, because that's what the video is very good at. So you've typed this all in, and you've got it to run. So let's just make sure the one I have here runs. Okay, pretty easy. All right. Now, just for comparison, I'm going to run Python ex18.py. I'm going to go gabuba, like that. Okay, so what we've got is there's a similarity between passing 3 arguments to ex3.py and the passing of arguments to this first function we have here, print2. Now, how this is defined, how I've set this up, is I define my functions that I plan on using, and then I use them. So let's do this. Let's go, print2 is here, right? So we want to go to print2 down here. And notice I jumped down there. If you want, I can scroll down there instead. So I'm at print2, and all the way down here is where I use print2. Now you've been using functions this whole time, so now you're going to make your own. But the concept to understand is, in the same way that I pass command line arguments, I'm passing Python arguments. And being Python, they have to be Python data types, in this case 2 strings. That's really similar to passing 3 strings to the ex13.py. A way to think, or a way to conceptualize functions, is they're kind of like mini scripts. So if I go up to this, I use the word def, and that says, hey Python, I would like to define a new function. It's going to be like a little mini chunk of code, a little script, a little Python script. This asterisk here says, I'm going to pass you a bunch of arguments. It's exactly like the argv. It's almost like that, but we use args just to sort of as a convention, really. So, and you notice inside the line of code, I'm doing the same thing that I did back at exercise 13. See that? Exactly the same. I'm taking this args, which is a list. You're going to get more into lists later, and I'm exploding them out into here, right? And then I print them out. Now, the other key thing is, at the end of the define, there's this colon, and then I have to indent 4 spaces. Okay, so the 4 spaces, and Adam is sort of like jumping. It's sort of like, compensating for it, treating it like a tab. But it's 4 spaces. That should happen automatically right when I hit enter. Your text editor, if it's set up right, should jump in the 4 spaces necessary to do that. Okay, you shouldn't have to. And if you want to dedent, so that's an indent, and I want to dedent, which goes back, I hit the backspace. So see, like this. If I want to manually indent, I should just be able to hit tab, and that's it. I could do tab once more, and it'll go in a little further, and delete backspaces. So doing that, you type a colon, and then you type your code indented, and then you dedent, like that. See, I just hit the backspace, and that ends your function. Python will read this, take these 2 lines, attach them to this function name, and then you can use that as a function in your own scripts. So now I can run it the same way you ran all the other functions, print, int, input, any of those other functions. You just made your own. So let's look at the next function, print2 again. This line here is very annoying. Why would I want to do that? Python already can do the parameters, and you've been using them. Whenever you did print like that, you're using the comma to kind of pass Python a list, or print a list. So, okay, let's go check this out. We made our own. Rather than using args like we did up here with this little asterisk, which is actually not too common, we can just say, hey, Python, this function is going to take 2 arguments. Okay, it's similar to how we can say this script takes 3 arguments, but we just sort of skip the step of doing that. And notice this script also just has only 1 line, whereas the print2, the original one, has 2 lines because we have to extract them. So we're saving ourselves some typing, and also we're being more explicit about what this function can take. So there we go. So now when we call print2, same thing. And then we have a similar thing, print1, just takes 1 argument, and print none, that's how you do no arguments. And then each of those get called. Okay, so that's how you define functions. That's how you make new functions. You write def for define, you give the name of the function you want, you do 2 parentheses and then any arguments you want separated by commas, you type a colon, and if you do it right, you should be able to just hit enter and start typing your code. When you're done typing the code for the function, you just hit enter your last time and then dedent with the backspace. You do that, and then this code here gets attached to this name, and you can run it. Okay, so what happens when you call that function or you run it? Okay, so calling a function, you type the name, parentheses, and the arguments. It's just like you've been doing with print and int and input and open and all those other things. So what happens? Remember, we go from straight line, like in exercise 13, to branches. The idea is we want to branch. So you can think of this code as like a branch because it has like a second level. But we can also say the execution, like how Python runs, now branches. It sort of like splits. So what we can say is it's straight line. Python is not running these functions. It's stacking them up. It's kind of like we're creating variables, right? It doesn't really run the variables. It just sort of makes them. Okay, now we've got it. When we get to line 19, those functions are created now. When we get to this point, Python reads print2, parentheses. Okay, these are the 2 arguments to print2. It packs all that up, and then it effectively jumps to right here, line 4. So it goes from line 20 to line 4. That's not totally accurate, but it's a good way to think about it in the beginning. It jumps to that spot. Okay, and then right at this spot, you have your arguments prepared for you. From there, Zed and Shaw are now prepared into args. You then do your code, you call args, you do your print, and when you get to here, Python remembered, he called this, she called this from print2, down at line 20. So I'm going to jump back to line 20 and continue executing. So the same thing here, print2 again is going to jump up to print 2. Now you have 2 arguments. It prepped them for you. You're ready to go. You run it, and then it jumps back to print 2 again. You go to print 1. It processes your parentheses, the 1 argument and parentheses. It jumps to print 1, runs these lines, hits the end, jumps back to line 22, and then the same thing here. Does your 1 line, print, jumps back. That's functions. In the core of computer science, you can do pretty much everything if you have functions and you have if statements. You can do almost everything you need to do with those two. It's not necessarily easy, but you can do everything you need. And we'll get into if statements later. Okay, now breaking this is very, very easy. You have all the same similar things. Like if I do this, I can rerun it. Oh, let me run this one. And see, it says name prin2 is not defined. It's the exact same as if you defined a variable, okay? So that's the first kind of error you can do. You can, again, all the same mistakes you made with, say, print. We can do this. Oh, this would be interesting. So let's do this one. Let's combine these. We're just going to do 1 argument to print 2. What happens when we do that? Print 2 again, missing 1 argument, positional argument 2. So what it's saying is, if we go look at the definition of print 2 again, it says argument 2 is missing. See where it says argument 2 down at the end? That is missing. What's another error we can cause? We can get here's a really common one. So I just moved that in 1 level, okay? So I de-dented it is the way to think about it. When I run this, I get this indentation error, expected an indented block. So anytime you see a colon, the stuff underneath it needs to be indented and it needs to be all on the same line. Now, that's easy to spot, but sometimes people do this. They're like, it's indented. No, it has to be indented the same level, right? So it has to be indented that much, okay? Now, when we run that one, we get a different error, okay? Python will say, all right, this is indented this much. You know, Zed's sort of indented it that much. So that means all the other lines for this level of code, this block, are at 3. Then it sees this 4 and it's like, what is that? Why is that indented 4? The error for that is unexpected indent. So what trips you up is the error is actually here. You have to indent that 1 more. All right, play with this some more, see how many other errors you can cause, and then we're going to do a lot more functions pretty much for the rest of the first half of the book. We use a lot of functions, so it's a lot of fun. Now we're starting to get into the blocks we need to make more complicated Python scripts.